There we go. Okay. So today we are very excited to have Laura Griffin with us. Laura is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of more than 30 books and novellas. Her books have been translated into 14 languages. She has won the Romance Writers of America Rita Award for Best Romantic Suspense twice, as well as the Daphne du Maurier Award. So she's going to tell us a lot more, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it to her. So thank you so much for being with us today, Laura. So here you can put it however you want. Yeah.
Hi, everyone at home. I'm Laura, and I'm really delighted to be here with you all. I live in Austin. I've lived in Austin for many years, and I used to take my kids to the story time over at the West Bank Community Library. So the libraries are a very special place, and I think it's wonderful that you guys gather together and talk about writing and books and share your enthusiasm. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Just a little bit of background about myself. I was going to give some background. I was going to give some thoughts on my writing process and the specific type of writing that I do. Take whatever you will. I don't know exactly what everyone's different genres are, but I'm going to share about what I write. And then I thought we could open it up to discussion and questions, and maybe we can learn more from each other. So just some background. I started my professional writing career as a newspaper reporter. I started doing reporting when I was in college. I went to Vanderbilt University and I was the news editor for the student newspaper there. And after graduation, I went to work at the National Banner. Unfortunately, that paper is no longer, it doesn't exist there anymore. They merged with their competitor. But I worked at the National Banner, and then from there I moved to Chicago, and I covered news in the Chicago suburbs, and I specifically covered a lot of the education beat. But then when I was a newspaper reporter, the way the newsroom works is that, the newsroom is in operation 24/7. So everybody has to sign up for holidays and weekends and share that. And so I would be assigned holidays and weekends, and that was my opportunity to cover any of the hard news that would happen, because you're the only one there and you have to go respond to whatever happens. Shootings, fires, there was a kidnapping once, just whatever is going on, you respond. And, you follow up with police investigators and things like that. And so through that type of reporting, I started to develop an interest in the crime stories and crime fiction. And so then several years later, when I decided to start writing fiction, I knew that I wanted to write crime fiction. That was what was interesting to me. And so I started down that path, and I wrote several manuscripts before I had a published manuscript, but it was a very good learning experience, and I got a literary agent, and I had a lot of editorial input and help as I kind of built my skills. And then I started out with Simon and Schuster, and I wrote 20 books with Simon and Schuster. Wow. And let's see, God. 3 different series with them. No, 4 different series with Simon and Schuster. And then I moved over recently to Penguin Random House. And I started a new series with Penguin Random House called the Texas Murder Files. And it's called the Texas Murder Files. And so the common thread through that, the characters overlap, but the thread is that all the stories are set in Texas. And I've published 5 books in that series, and then I've done several standalone titles also with Penguin Random House. So my next book is coming out in November, and I can talk a little bit more about that. This is the book. I'm really excited about this one. This one, as opposed to some of my other titles, this is a suspense novel. It's set in far west Texas near Marfa. I don't know if you all have ever been out there, like the Big Bend area. And it's coming out in hardcover. This is an advanced copy that I brought for the library, and then I brought one to give away I thought we could have a little drawing or something, and one of you guys could take it home. And that comes out in November. So I would say that my expertise is mostly romantic suspense and suspense writing. That's what I focus on. And then so just some more thoughts on that. Of the different series I've written, they kind of range in, I guess you could call it spice level, from straight suspense, which is kind of the love story is not a prominent part of the overall book, to it's a little bit more steamy romance I have a digital series that features Navy SEALs, and those are the heroes, and that's a little bit more steamy. So it's kind of a spectrum of different things. But the two longest running series that I have are the Tracers series, which is set in Texas and involves a lot of forensic specialists solving crimes through forensic science. And that's what they're called Tracers. And so that's kind of the theme of the series. And then the new series that I was just mentioning, the Texas Murder Files. And that is set in Texas, and it's more focused on a group of people. That there's a family that is featured in all the different stories, and the brothers are cops and the sisters in the stories. And so it's kind of more about the characters tying it together in the setting. That one has 5 books so far. So I just wanted to kind of talk about a little bit about my writing process and kind of when some of the things I've used as guidelines as I'm working. So with regard to romantic suspense, I don't know if you guys read it or have read it or tried to write it. The two kind of elements that tie that together, that genre, is there's a romance and there's a mystery, and they're kind of woven together. Examples are, you might have read something by Nora Roberts, Melinda Lee, Linda Howard, Suzanne Brockman, Allison Brennan. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking of some of the ones that I've read recently, but what you're doing with that is you've got your mystery that you're kind of your investigation. There's a crime happen. Often it's a murder, maybe it's a kidnapping, but something happens and they're investigating, trying to solve the crime. But what I like about romantic suspense is you also have this relationship that you're focusing on. And so it's kind of like you have two engines that are powering your story. You've got the suspense that you're developing for the mystery. And then you've also got this relationship unfolding, and that kind of adds a little bit more of an emotional punch to the story. And so if you put it together, I've always found that it's a good way to kind of keep your story moving. So when you're taking a break from the action, there's a little bit more character development. These two people are getting to know each other better, and sometimes they're not getting along, and sometimes they are getting along, but there's an emotional component. And then there's the action, and so you kind of go back and forth, and it kind of keeps the story moving forward. So there's 3 kind of things I try to keep in mind when I'm writing a romantic suspense story, but I think it can apply to any story. And when I talk to writers groups, I try to focus on these 3 elements because I think that they kind of give you a little bit of a framework. I call it the 3 Ps, and it's problem, proximity, and pacing. And they can apply to any type of story that you're writing. The problem is the core conflict that you're writing about. And that is really important. It's important that you spend some time thinking about it, because if you don't have a strong conflict, it's going to be very difficult to carry it through for 300 or 400 pages. If the conflict is based on just a simple misunderstanding, or something that could be cleared up with, a conversation, it's really hard. You get into the middle of the book and you're just kind of running out of ways to pull your story forward, because it's just you've kind of exhausted it. And sometimes when that happens, it's tempting to replace that core story conflict with just kind of sparring between characters and a lot of banter back and forth, and and that can get you a little ways, but that just gets really, I think readers don't like that. They get annoyed. They feel like their characters are just being whiny, or it just feels kind of childish in a way. And so it's worth, I mean, if you've ever had to go back to the drawing board on a book, you know how hard that can be, and delete chapters and chapters of work. So I find that it's really important to spend the time at the front end, really getting your strong conflict, getting that problem. And so you need one for your suspense plot. What is the problem? They're trying to solve a murder. They're trying to find the, whatever it is, the holy grail, so to speak, figuratively, whatever they're looking for, they're seeking something, they're trying to solve something, there's some mystery that they're trying to solve. But then for the relationship, because it's a romantic suspense, there also has to be a conflict there too. And again, it can't just be a misunderstanding. It needs to be something core to your characters, such as, maybe he's the prime suspect and she's the detective. And so that's core to who they are, and that's going to create conflict throughout the whole story. Or maybe it's that, she's the protected witness and he's supposed to be the one protecting her. And so they're not supposed to have a relationship because that would be taboo. Or maybe it's, you know, that someone's on the run and they're trying to escape the cops and the other character is the cops. Or maybe they're both two investigators, but they're coming at it from a totally different perspective. Maybe one is a private investigator and they can break all the rules, and the other is an FBI agent and they have to follow all the rules. And so they have the conflict is key to who they are. And so it's not something that you can just resolve with a quick, solution. So that helps kind of keep the tension high in the story. And so, in fact, the first book I wrote, the editor commented that they really liked the conflict. And the conflict in that book was that the police detective believed that the woman in the story, her ex-husband had murdered his sister. And so he had all these reasons to hate her. And he thought that she helped maybe cover up the crime. But of course, that turned out she didn't. But they had this built-in kind of animosity. So, and it wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was like core to the whole story. So as you're deciding on what your core conflict is going to be, pick something that's meaty enough that it's going to propel the story for 300 or 400 pages. So that would be problem. Another thing to think about, an element, is proximity. And this is especially important if you're writing a story that has, whether it's middle grade or any level, if there's a romance in the story, doesn't matter what your level of, romance or steaminess of the story, but if there's going to be a core relationship in the story, you need proximity. So you need to have these people together a lot. You can't just have, and that can be a little bit tough when you're doing something that's a mystery, because oftentimes in mysteries, you've got your characters in different places running down leads or chasing after the bad guy. But if they're off doing their own thing the whole time and they're only communicating in text messages or phone calls, it kind of takes some of the tension out of the story, because the romance or the relationship is not really building in a serious way if they're not physically together. They're not having that eye contact. They're not having that physical interaction, reading each other's body language. And that's all stuff that will add good layers to your relationships of your characters. So proximity is really important. So you want to have your characters, on the page together, in doing what they're doing. They need to be in the scenes together. Now, they don't need to be in every scene together, because sometimes it's good for your pacing to get a break and to switch viewpoints and to have new characters come in. And you can also layer in some suspense if one character doesn't know something that has happened because they're not there. So that can cause some secrets, and that can be a good tool. But you want them to have some time together on the page, because that's an important way that you're going to build their relationship. And then a third thing that's really important, and I would say I'm partial to suspense fiction, so I think this is so important for any book, but particularly for suspense books, is pacing. And I think this goes back to my days as a newspaper reporter, and my original editors just drilled in me the importance of, you have to hook the reader in the lead. And the lead is usually a one paragraph, just like this first sentence, maybe two sentences, but you have to hook them right away. And I would write stories and the column inches would just get cut off, and if you didn't get your important information up at the top of the story, it never got into the newspaper. So that kind of drilled in me the importance of hooking someone right away. So I think pacing is really important. You have to start with a bang and really hook the reader. And there's different ways to do it. It doesn't always have to be something that is literally a bang. It doesn't have to be a gunshot or a murder or a grisly crime scene. It might be something a little more subtle. I read a wonderful book this summer called God of the Woods. I don't know if you've read it.
We were just talking about that.
Talked about it. And the opening scene, the camp counselor sees the empty bunk bed. And if you know that she's a camp counselor and you know that she sees an empty bunk bed, your imagination just runs wild with all the terrible possibilities of what problem is going on. So that hook is so immediate, and there was no blood, there was no screaming or gunshots. It was just, yes, it was in your imagination. You were like, oh my gosh, what has happened and what a problem is going after this woman who's the camp counselor. So there's a lot of different ways you can have a hook. They don't have to be explosions, but it has to be something that immediately shows a problem and creates a reader question, like how are they going to, what happened to this person? Why is the bunk empty? How is she going to figure this out? So you have to immediately put those questions in someone's mind. And then through the rest of the story, you're just trying to keep that pace moving. A lot of suspense writers like to use a ticking clock where you have to, you have some sort of deadline. We have to figure out who did it before the killer strikes again, or before the bad guy escapes, or before the bomb goes off. Whatever it is, there's literally a ticking clock. And that can be really effective because it just kind of keeps this underlying tension. And especially if you just kind of subtly reference it throughout the book, you're kind of always reminding the reader that there's this tension happening. So pacing is really important. And with romantic suspense, one of the things that's nice about that genre is that you can keep your pace moving by, you have the action scenes where maybe there's a big revelation, and maybe there's something very traumatic happens, and then there's a quieter scene where people are kind of responding to the stress of that. And they're like, maybe sometimes they don't respond in the same way. People have different reactions to stress. So maybe they respond in opposite ways. But whatever they do, they're learning more about each other, which is kind of building this bond that they didn't maybe want because they have some sort of core conflict at the beginning of the story. So that pace, it's about keeping the pace moving forward. And you can do it in big ways and small ways. The big ways are things like having the ticking clock. The small ways are things like those chapter hooks where you end the chapter on something suspenseful happening, and you just want that reader to turn the page. Even just the word at the end of the chapter, the very final word of your chapter is important. You don't want to end on a blah word. You want to end on a word that has a little bit of punch to it. Sometimes it's just about rearranging that sentence so that the punchiest word in the sentence comes at the very end of the chapter. So that it's just, you just leave that reader with a vivid word. It might be, what did she see at the end? What did she see when she peered into the window? She saw blood. Or,
That's a great idea.
So you don't have to say, the idea is the same even if you chose a blah word, but it's just punchier to end it with a strong word. So there's all kinds of ways, big and small, to keep the reader turning the pages and keep the pace moving. But if you decide to write a story that features a romance or features a prominent relationship, you're using kind of the emotional energy, and you're using the investigation or the action to kind of both be kind of twin engines that are powering your story forward. And so that's one reason that I like to write in that genre. And then if you decide that you're going to write a story and you're going to call it a romance and you're going to try to market it as a romance, whether it's a romantic suspense, there's a genre right now that's been very popular called romantasy, and it's a combination of fantasy and romance. There's all kinds of different romance. There's sci-fi romance. I mean, there's all kinds of romance. But if you're going to say that it's a romance and you're going to try and tap into that big market of readers that are wanting to buy that, you need to have a happily ever after ending. Some people do not like happily ever after endings. In another version of that is happy for now, happy for now, which is HFN. So it means that there's some kind of resolution to the relationship.
Kill off your
Yeah, well, you can do that if you're writing suspense. You could kill off the romantic lead. But if you're gonna try and market it as a romance, you need to just be aware that just like a mystery reader, when they pick up the book and they expect that at the end of the mystery, the murder mystery, they're going to find out who the murderer is. It's the same way with romance. A romance reader is going to pick up the book expecting there's some kind of satisfying ending at the end. It does not have to be a wedding. It doesn't have to be some kind of traditional, they ride off into the sunset, but it's got to be some sort of resolution to that emotional plot line that you created. So if you decide you're not going to do that, you're going to get a lot of one-star reviews because people are going to say, this was not a romance. So how did they market this as romantic suspense? It wasn't really a romance. So you can do that, but just fair warning that it's like if you wrote a murder mystery, and then you didn't reveal who the murderer is, people are going to say, what kind of murder mystery is this? So it's just an expectation that's built in. So, but I think that having said that, I think happily ever after endings can get a bad rap because some people think they're too predictable. But I think that it's about how creative you can get with it. How are you going to create something interesting and imaginative to solve your story problem? Just like when you're writing a murder mystery, it's about how creative can you solve the crime? How creative was the crime? How creative did the detective get to try and figure out what happened? We all know they're going to figure out what happened. The question is, how did it happen and how did they figure it out? That's what's interesting to people that are reading a romance. They want to know, we know the two people will get together at the end. How does that happen? What do they have to overcome? How do they get through this core conflict that they have and come to a resolution? So, so that's just a word about endings, especially if you're going to market your book as a romance. And then I guess I have pivoted more in recent years towards more suspense heavy books. And I've just gotten really interested in the forensic side of things. And, you know, I do a lot of research. One of the things that carried over from my reporter days is just the importance of interviewing people when you're researching a story, and just how you can get so many wonderful details by sitting with people and really learning about what they do and asking them about their job, their day-to-day. Even if you can have a chance to see their workplace, you can actually go to the crime lab and actually be there. If you can go on a ride along with a police officer and like really see what that's like. If you have opportunities to interview someone who has an interesting job, maybe they're a park ranger, or maybe they're in some sort of forensic field, or maybe but whatever it is you do, maybe they train search and rescue dogs, whatever. If you're going to have it in your story, if you can track down those people and just talk to them in person and learn about their day-to-day and learn about their job and learn about the misconceptions about their job, because everybody's job has misconceptions. And it will give you these insights that you can weave into your story, and it makes it come to life more because you've had that detail that you put in there, that you got from just firsthand observation. So I'm a big proponent of that. I always think it's always good to do as much kind of research as you can. You don't want to get your story too weighted down with research, and you're not trying to just show it all off, like all these facts you learned, but you're trying to weave in some details that just bring your story to life. One of the examples I think of is I wrote a book years ago called Thread of Fear, and the main character is a forensic artist. And so I read all these books about forensic artists and what they do, and they basically they do a variety of things, but one of the things they do is they can interview someone after a crime happens, and then from that interview they can create a suspect sketch for police to use to go after the suspect. So in this case, I interviewed a woman that had been doing this for many years for the Houston Police Department. And she had interviewed children who witnessed a kidnapping and gotten a description of the kidnapper from a young child. I mean, I can't even imagine how hard that would be to sit down with a 5-year-old child and get enough description that you can create a drawing that looks like an actual person that the police can then go find. But one of the things she was telling me was how she uses Beanie Babies to just calm the kid. If she's working with a young victim and she has these a collection, and they can thumb through her collection and pick out something that they pick out the dog, or they pick out the bunny rabbit, whatever, and they just become more comfortable, and it gives them something to focus on while she's talking to them, because a lot of times these kids have been traumatized. Well, that is a detail that I must have read 3 or 4 books about forensic artists, and I had never read anything like that. And so that was a detail that I was able to incorporate. But it's a detail that came from just sitting and talking to someone. So you get these details if you talk to people in person and you see their workspace and you see what they do and you kind of see how their day-to-day is, and it can really help you. So I'm a big proponent of, if you have a chance to get any kind of details that you can weave in, even if it's setting details, you can go to the place where your book is set. You mentioned California. For this book, I did a lot of research in the Big Bend area, and just going hiking, you know, going into restaurants and coffee shops and talking to people, talking to the people that run the burrito place. Like you're getting a feel for the vibe of the community. How do people talk? What kind of accents do they have? What kind of education do they have? You know, what is the weather like? What are, you know, just a thing like a community bulletin board that's in some restaurant where people have left little business cards and things. They tell you about that community. What kind of things are people wanting help with? What are they, you know, what kind of jobs are out there to be, you know, whether it's dog walker or, you know, I'll give you a tarot card reading, you know, whatever it is, there's a vibe to a community that you can learn more about by paying attention, but you have to go to the place to kind of get that. Yeah. And so anyway, those are just some things that I like to use when I'm working on a book, and to try and kind of get as much detail as I can to kind of weave into the story and keep the details vivid and kind of paint that picture. And so I guess that's kind of the things I wanted to share, and maybe we could open it up to questions and
I was going to say, I noticed that if you mention you're writing a book, people just start talking.
Yeah.
I've noticed that everywhere I've traveled, if I mention that I'm writing a book, they don't care what it's on. They want to talk.
Well, it's funny because
they think, oh, I'm meeting a real author.
Yeah.
You know, and then when they find out you only have one book, oh, well, they don't care, you know, it doesn't matter. They've already started talking.
It's funny you should say that, because when I first started out as a newspaper reporter, when you mention you're writing a story, they're like, oh, well, I don't want to be quoted in the paper. Yeah. So, but then when I was writing fiction, I found the opposite, like you're talking about. And the thing I always would tell people to set them at ease is, I'm not quoting you. Not when I was a newspaper reporter, and I was quoting them, but if I'm interviewing a specialist in some area, maybe it's somebody who's a crime scene investigator, and I just tell them, I don't want to quote you. I just want to know more about what you do. And then they start talking, and you ask them questions about, well, what's the strangest case you ever worked? Or what's the creepiest place you ever had to go to do a job? Or the weirdest place you ever had to go for a case? And then the stories start to come out, and you get these just interesting stories that they've, over years of their job, they've kind of got all these war stories. So, but yes, as long as they know that they're not being quoted, they will relax more, and they want to share.
Can I mention a question about proximity? When in modern day, I mean, is proximity, could that also be in letters or in social media? I mean, does it have, is it less?
It's a little tricky.
Face to face?
Well, it's a little tricky because if you make it too much text messages or emails, I mean, obviously, especially young people, if you're writing for middle grade, they communicate with text messages so much. But I do think that there's a lack of immediacy, and especially if you're writing suspense, because everyone knows you're not physically in danger if you're not in the room. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like it adds to that level of just underlying danger of a scene if there's people together in the space. There's a certain,
if you're doing danger, of course.
There's a certain risk associated with being in the room with, whether it's a suspect or whether it's just anyone.
No buffer.
There's no buffer. If you tell too much of your story through these messages, it's hard to write a story these days without including some of that, because so much communication happens that way now. But you don't want it all to be messages back and forth, because it loses some of its immediacy, I think.
Yeah.
And if you have two people that aren't liking each other, they have to be forced together.
Yes, and that's where you get some of your great your relationship sparks happen, like the conflict, the arguments, and also as a writer, you can convey so much when people are in the same room. Eye contact. I mean, they may be having a very friendly, polite conversation, but the hatred spewing between two people, if they're in the room, you can make your reader aware of these little subtle cues, body language, little subtext happening. Maybe they're having the conversation, but someone's not paying attention because they're busy scrolling their phone. That's a whole different type of conversation. If you just had it be a verbal exchange back and forth, you don't get that kind of insult woven into that scene. So,
well, I was thinking
proximity is
on
important.
The romance side.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the romance side, it's important just because you have all these subtle.
They want to be together, but they're not.
Well, that can be useful too.
Right.
If you have kind of the yearning type of a story where people are apart and they're communicating through some way, like, messages,
Or letters.
but
Yeah.
ultimately, I guess if you're writing in the 1800s,
Yeah,
it's letters. Yeah.
It's letters.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first half of the book, I mean, the only way they
Mhm.
communicate is by letter,
Yeah.
by mail.
Yeah.
And mail was very unpredictable. And
Yeah.
so, there
Yeah.
was all that suspense.
Well, the suspense can come from what one person knows something that the other doesn't,
Mhm.
is because they weren't there to see it happen and everything's delayed. The communication is delayed. I don't know.
Okay,
That's,
thank you.
yeah.
Can you talk about your process a little bit
Mhm.
other than just the interviewing? Like,
Mhm.
how do you structure,
Yeah.
getting the job done?
Usually I start with a core premise. And often I get my ideas. I'm kind of a news junkie because I was a reporter. So I love to read true crime and just, I follow news headlines and, let me give you an example. Okay, so I wrote a book a few years ago called The Last Close Call. And the main character is a genetic genealogist. And that is someone who uses genealogy to solve crimes. And I was reading a newspaper article about the Golden State Killer in California, who was got away with his crime, many, many murders for years and years. And the case was cold. And then they started through these DNA developments to be able to take a little bit of DNA from the crime scene and trace back the family tree. And then the genetic genealogist can take the family tree and say, well, he's from this branch of the family tree and there's only three males in that branch of the family tree, and two lived in Arkansas and one lived in California, and let's look at this guy in California. And then the police can go pursue that lead or eliminate suspects based on where they were or what age they were at the time that the crime happened. They all look like they could be genetically a fit, but who was there? Who had the opportunity and the location and the age that it could have been him? So anyway, that was fascinating to me to read about that happening in real life. And so I started researching genetic genealogy, and I wrote a book called The Last Close Call, in which the heroine is the genetic genealogist. And she has she's done a lot of this, and the work has taken kind of a psychological toll on her. And so she's pivoted away from that work, and she is now doing helping adoptees find their biological parents. So she's using her genealogy skills to help people find their biological families. When this detective comes knocking on her door and says, I have this cold case, I really need your help. I think you can solve it. You're the best at what you do, and I just need you to help. And of course, she's still reluctant, and that's part of the conflict. But so sometimes it's like a headline that I might read that sparks the idea. And then once you have your premise, then you start developing that out, and you have to find out, what is your main character going to be? Is it their profession that you're going to be focused on? Is it some sort of loss that they had in their life that you're focusing on? Some experience? Were they part of some, I did one story where the heroine it wasn't her job that was so much the focus. It was that she was on a campus when there was an active shooter, and she saw something that helped the police track down what happened. So her role in the story was more of this witness in this traumatic situation. So who is your character? And then once you know who that is, developing the character, and you want to know so much about them. You want to know, everything from age and what kind of car they drive and what kind of house they live in. Do they have any pets? Do they have any, close friends, close siblings? Because when you're writing, you don't want your characters to just exist in a vacuum and feel fake. I mean, people are part of a community, even if you're a loner, even if you have somebody, you have a pet, you have a neighbor, you have someone at your job that you interact with. So, and as a writer, you also don't want to have too many characters in your story because it can get kind of unwieldy and it's hard for the reader to follow if you have just dozens of names. So I usually try to have there be at least one person that is my character's friend or some sort of emotional connection. It might be a sibling. I mean, I have two sisters and I'm very close to my sisters. So I've had a number of stories where the sisters had this really close bond, which is also, as you would know if you have sisters, also fraught with all kinds of tension too. But there's that bond. Or maybe it's a neighbor where they cross paths all the time and they're really involved in each other's day-to-day lives, even though they're very different walks of life. That can be a good way to do it. It could be someone at work that they're really bonded to because they are experiencing something together at work, like the trauma of investigating a grisly murder or something. But whatever it is, you need someone in your story who can be that sounding board and provide that, because it develops your character and it gives them more dimensions if you've got some people in their lives that they are close to. So you develop that character, and then I start outlining the plot and start, I usually know a few of the key events that are going to happen, maybe something about the beginning and a few things that happen in the middle and kind of how it's going to end. And it's not till you start really pacing it out and looking at one frame, if you're looking at it like a movie frame, one to the next, that you start to kind of fill in those details. And sometimes it's kind of fuzzy until I really get there. It might be just something has to happen where this is revealed, and I'm not really sure how it's going to be revealed yet, but I know it has to be revealed. So I'll just kind of put a little sticky note and know that I've got to kind of come up with that scene, but that's going to be the crux of the scene, is that something is revealed, but I don't really know how yet, but I'll get to that.
Like you're
well,
using a board?
I kind of use a combination. I do actually use a storyboard where I have sticky notes that I move around, but I also use a laptop with just a scene list, and I like to cut and paste those and move them around. So I kind of do both. Yeah, what I like about the storyboard is that I was saying how pacing is so important if you're writing suspense. Sometimes I color code my scenes and I put red, like a little red mark on top of anything that's like an action scene. And if I've got rows of white note cards and there's no red, I'm thinking this is going to get really slow. I'm going to need some action happening here. Yeah, it's going to lose steam. So I need to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a great idea.
Yeah, it helps to have that visual. And then I also include a lot of forensics in my stories. And so I use green for forensics, and I'll color code my scene, my note card or my sticky note green if there's going to be forensic stuff revealed. Because if you get too much of that, it can weight down your story. You know, you don't want it to just be this big information dump in the middle of your story, where it's just all this forensic information. I mean, some of that is really interesting, but if you do too much of it, it gets a little tedious. So you want to kind of make that a little bit more sparse. So, but everybody has their different ways that work for them. You know, I know some people who do it completely on computer and they don't have any notes that they physically look at, but it's all on their laptop and they do it that way. So it's whatever works for you.
I think next month we're going to have a genetic genealogist come
to
speak to us, actually. So if anybody's interested in that idea, we have somebody next month. Yeah.
Have to cough up our info.
No.
Swab on the way
to there is a question on Zoom. Mary asked, how do you stop focusing on writing facts as a reporter and start writing creatively instead?
That is a great question. One of the things that I really love about being a fiction writer versus a news reporter is when I was a news reporter, I mean, you have to be such a stickler for accuracy. I mean, if you misquote someone even by just a word or two, sometimes they will go sideways and they'll come down and yell at the paper, and, you know, and if you get your facts mixed up, you know, and it always happens. I mean, you know, you're trying your best, but sometimes you might get a name wrong or something. So I was just always trying to be a stickler for every little fact and get everything perfectly accurate. The fun thing about being a fiction writer is that you can create your own setting as needed for the story. So for example, this book is set near Marfa, but it's not in Marfa. There are some scenes that take place in Marfa, which is a town in West Texas, but it's not in Marfa. And the reason I didn't put it in Marfa is because I didn't want to have to be a slave to all the different exact factual things. Well, there's really not the police department only has this many people in it. How could that happen? Or, you know, this road doesn't go there, or there's no ditch there, or there's no river there. Like I wanted it to be, I needed the story to serve the setting to serve the story purposes. So if you create a fictional town, even if it's a real area, like I've done this all over Texas because most of my books are set in Texas. Fictional town in the Piney Woods, fictional town on the Gulf Coast, fictional town in the Hill Country. And then even when I set stories in a real place like Austin, I use fictional places that maybe they're based on true places. I mean, I have a favorite Mexican restaurant. I'm sure everyone in town has a favorite Mexican restaurant, but I'll create a new name for it so that it's a fictional place, especially if you're going to have something bad happen there, like a murder, or that you know, the convenience store manager is the bad guy, or, you know, so that can really help you because it gives you artistic license to do what you need to do for your story and not be too hung up on, well, is that really accurate? So, so that's just the thing that can help you as a writer if you're looking for a way to, you know, do what your story needs, but not have it be perfectly accurate.
When you're writing characters, do you feel, I mean, in your Texas Murder Files series, you have a different protagonist in each book. I was wondering why do you want to have a different protagonist in each book? And also, for your protagonists and for your more minor characters, are they often based on real people or yeah? Okay.
Yeah, actually a lot of the characters are based on, some of them are just little mannerisms based on people I know. But then the core characters usually based on people I've met or interviewed, things like that. So it might be a detective, and I've, you know, interviewed a lot of cops over the years, so it might have different characteristics I've seen kind of rolled into one character. Or you know, if I'm reading about a character that does something that's a forensic specialty, like forensic anthropologist, you know, I've met some and I've read books by some, and so I'm kind of incorporating different characteristics into one person. What was the other question about setting?
I think I was asking why you choose
to
have different character, different main character.
Well, a couple reasons. If you're writing romantic suspense, which I've been writing for most of my books with Simon & Schuster and with Penguin Random House, the series were romantic suspense.
Right.
You kind of want that relationship resolution at the end of the story. And so what I would do is have one couple be the focus of one story, and there's usually one overarching mystery in that story, and that's kind of a standalone storyline. And then the next story might be someone else in that story world, but a different couple. So like I told you I have sisters, and so a lot of my characters have sisters. So the first story in the Texas Murder Files is called Hidden, and it's a woman, and she's a news reporter in Austin, Texas. The next story in the series, it's her sister, who we just get a small reference to at the first story. And she lives on the Texas Gulf Coast, and she gets embroiled in a murder mystery. And her sister then gets involved at the end. But there's just this little connection between them. But it's the sister and a different detective that's in that story. And then in the next story, it's the detective's brother and somebody else that comes into the setting. And so each one I can kind of move on to a different focus.
What kind of French does in her mystery?
Yeah.
Have a minor character that becomes the major character.
I read a book, Laura.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I read several books that you wrote with Allison Brennan.
Yes.
Where you each wrote like a chapter or whatever. Those were really good books.
Oh, thank you. So Allison is a friend of mine. Allison Brennan writes also suspense, and she started with romantic suspense also. And she's a friend of mine, and we've written a series together called the Moreno and Hart series. And we had never collaborated before with another writer, so we just came up with our own idea. She's going to write Moreno, and I'm going to write Hart. So it's the Moreno and Hart, and they're both private detectives, and they're friends. And so we came up with a story. We broke it into two parts. The first part is told from the perspective of Scarlett Moreno, and the second part of the story is told from the perspective of Krista Hart, who's the character. So she wrote the first half of the story, and I wrote the second half of the story, and it's one book. So we wrote 3 books and 1 novella in that series, and it was nice because we could collaborate. You know, she lives in California, and the stories are set in Southern California, so we didn't have all the space time where we could sit down and hash it all out. So we would have these calls where we would design the story, and then we would kind of go off separately and write our parts, and then we'd come together and hash through it, and then read each other's work and trade ideas. But that's how we did it.
So where was the resolution in the story?
Well, in that situation, that's an interesting point. It didn't have a romance in each story. It had a different kind of mystery in each story. So one mystery would be solved in book one, and the next, and in that story, there was a love interest for each of those two characters, but it kind of was trailing through the whole series. So there's different ways to do it. I mean, it just depends on what works for the plot you're doing. So
Interesting. That sounds like it
Yeah.
would be kind of tricky to do.
yeah, I mean, collaborating with another writer is hard in the sense that even just their schedules, trying to line up schedules with people, and like, you know, she's kind of a night owl and I'm kind of a morning person. And so like finding the right times to match up and compare notes. But it was fun though. It was definitely a fun change of pace. So
I'm always interested in that and how collaborations work, because it seems like there are a lot of ways for them not to work.
yeah, I was gonna say they don't always work.
Yeah, right, yeah. But
Yeah.
but you guys worked well together.
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
We did.
yeah.
Yeah, we both got so busy. She's got let's see, at the time we were writing, she had 4 kids at home, and now she's got several kids at home and their mother's living with, I mean, she's got a lot going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's hard to find. Moreno and Hart. It's digital. So that was a fun series to work on.
That does sound like fun.
Yeah.
Your talk about dividing up the task reminded me of early days of Shakespeare.
Oh.
They would meet at a tavern. Shakespeare was unusual in that he had sole control.
Okay.
Or at least the evidence shows it did. But the pressure to have a commercial success, meeting in the cavern, and you do act 1, you do act 2, you do act 3, you act
delegate.
Yes, and then they discuss the overall plot.
Yeah.
Each one does an act.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, you know, at the time, Oxford College student would get into trouble going to a Shakespeare play. It was considered like the Fillmore West.
Yeah.
60s.
I've also been collaborated on anthologies. That's a little bit easier because usually an anthology has a theme, and they might say, okay, we're going to do, you know, it's usually like a mystery anthology. And so we've invited like 12 authors, and everybody contributes a novella or a short story. And so you're kind of working on a theme, but it's not, you don't actually have to collaborate on how your story unfolds. You can kind of go off on your own and do it. And that's a little easier.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I'm imagining, so you said that sometimes when you were a reporter and you asked people, sometimes they would get a little hesitant to share. But if you're a fiction writer and you say, okay, you read a headline and you think, okay, wow, what if this happened? But I need to really interview an FBI agent or a private detective or something.
Yeah.
So then do you write them and you just say, hey, I'm an author. Would it be possible for me to come and interview you? And usually they say yes.
Well, if you are a published author, oftentimes they will be more cooperative than when you're just starting out.
Yeah.
But one thing I found that was a good trick was if you read their book, a lot of these experts have written a book, and that's how you even know that they exist, because you read their book as part of your research.
Yeah.
If you read their book, then you can reach out to them, and they're usually flattered because you read their book and you want to talk to them about something that they wrote about. And, you know, that is a good kind of way to kind of segue into an interview.
Right.
If you've read their book. That's how I got an interview with Lois Gibson, the forensic artist in Houston. I read her book and it was amazing. And I'm from Houston originally. And so I reached out to her and I said, I'm going to be visiting family and I would love to sit down and visit with you if we could. And we arranged it, and so amazing to talk to her in person. And I got to see her art studio and see some of her work. And she, not only is she a forensic artist, she also is an artist. And so I got to see some of that work and just really talk to her in person and see, and she's just a remarkable person.
You know, Lois Gibson came to speak with us.
She did.
Right.
Yeah. So
and we have an interview with her on our YouTube page.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Well, the book Thread of Fear is dedicated to Lois.
Oh,
she's the inspiration behind that.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah.
All right.
She's amazing.
Nancy says on Zoom, how much do your much do your publishers put on to you to do a book a year, 2 books a
Two
year?
books a year or a book a year?
How many?
Okay.
Oh, how much pressure or deadline?
Pressure of deadlines. Well, I think one of the best things that came out of being a news reporter was learning that deadlines are important. And because if you didn't have your story by the deadline, you may as well not have had it at all. Because if it's not going in the paper for the next day's paper, they probably don't need it. So, so the importance of deadlines was kind of drilled into me really early. So I always would hit my deadlines. I used to do 2 books a year and sometimes a novella also. But I've downshifted a little bit in recent years to doing 1 book a year. I wouldn't say that's downshifting. I mean, it's still
a lot.
It's just I've decided that this pace works a little better for me.
Yeah.
It enables me to spend more time kind of doing the pre-writing work and the research, and really, you don't want to feel rushed, but that's just life. Sometimes you are rushed, but it's great when you have a little bit of extra time to really spend editing and polishing, and because you can really layer in some extra things into that work when you have the time to.
Well, 1 book a year is so
yeah.
Does your publishers give you a lot of feedback about changes they want you to make, or how does that collaboration work?
So usually what I found is usually if I turn in a book, like my current deadline is in October, the book will be coming out a year later. It usually takes a year. Once I've hit send on the manuscript, it usually takes about a year for it to I mean, yeah. So my editor will take 4 to 6 weeks to get back to me with an editorial letter, and it's usually 5-page letter or so with all kinds of and everybody's diplomatic. They first start out with, "Oh, I loved this and I love that. Now here's where we can really focus more," and it's all diplomatic. But what they're basically saying is, this needs work.
Yeah.
This works great, but this needs work. This was fuzzy. This needs to be developed more. Or this character was really interesting, but you just left them dangling. Like, why don't we bring them in and have them more of the story? So then I would go away and work on that and get that back, and then you're in process of copy edits, galleys. I mean, all the little proofreading phases, which unfortunately, sometimes they get rushed, and then that's how mistakes make their way into the manuscript, or into the finished book. But like this book, this is an advanced reader copy. So this is the second to last version of the book. There will be a couple of typos probably. I haven't actually read through this one because but there will be probably a couple of typos in here that will get changed before the actual final book.
So you wrote that a year ago?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
My deadline for this book was October 31st. It was Halloween, I remember. So I was like, Halloween, I'm turning my book in. So, yeah.
When did you get to see the cover for the first time?
Oh, the cover, they let's see, I guess that was maybe April or so, sometime in the spring. Maybe it was a little bit earlier. I can't remember, but it's the
covers are so great.
Yeah, wasn't it? It's so interesting because I never know. They always ask for information. Tell us about the setting, or what visuals do you think might be interesting for the cover? And I'll give them all these. I'll spend all this time. I'll do photographs and make a little storyboard, and then it'll be so different than I had in my mind. But they're artists and they know what they're doing. So. And covers can be affected by things like what colors are trending, what types of covers are trending. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen the trends of all the cartoon covers with animated 2-dimensional artwork. For rom-coms. And so, there's trends that they follow, and the artists are tuned into the designers. They pay a lot of attention to those marketing.
What's selling?
And so it's very rare that I really would weigh in on the cover because I feel like they have the expertise about that. There was one time when there was a woman featured on my cover and she looked so young, and I told my agent, I said, we need to talk to them about going back on this because I think she looks like she's 18, but in the story she's supposed to be 30. And it's just creeping me out. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll say something, but it's pretty rare. So
Nancy asks on Zoom, two questions. How did you happen to go from one publisher to another? And then Juanita has a question after that, but you can answer Nancy.
Well, I had a wonderful relationship with my editor at Simon and Schuster for many years, and we did almost the whole Sisters in Crime.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
We had, I don't know why I said Sisters in Crime. I meant the Tracer series that I was working on. We worked on that series together, and then she left her role as an editor and went to another part of the company. And so once she left, I felt like the series was kind of, I don't want to say it was orphaned, but I just felt like I wanted to move on to something else. And so I came up with a different series idea, and then we shopped it with several publishing houses, and then ended up with Penguin and Random House.
Okay. But you were with the same, did you say you were with the same agent, or you?
I've been with the same agent the whole time.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
we've known each other quite a long time, and but I've had different editors over the years depending on where I was. So
Juanita asks, that's why I indie publish. Oh, she said that's why I indie publish. I get to pick my own covers and set my own deadlines. All right.
Yeah, that is a wonderful thing about working as an indie author. And I have several friends who've gone that route, and they love that. They have that control over their deadlines and also their release schedule, because the release schedule also creates all kinds of time commitments. And so, if you know that your mother's having surgery, or daughter's getting married, or something is happening in your life that's going to kind of take over, you don't want your book coming out that month, because it's hard to juggle that. And so indie publishing can be a great route for people that are also, you have that autonomy.
Two things. One person had asked for the name of this book again.
Oh,
I think
the book is Innocence Road. This is the new one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Innocence Road. Yeah. There you go. Can you guys see it? Yeah, Innocence Road is the one that's coming out.
Yep, it's coming out November 11th, and y'all are all invited to the launch event. It's going to be at Vintage Wine and Bookstore. I'm sorry, Vintage Bookstore and Wine Bar.
Vintage Bookstore.
Y'all been over there?
It's
called Vintage Bookstore and Wine Bar. It's on 11th Street, and it's a great.
Two of my three favorite. As soon as they have ice cream, it'll be all three.
It's
wine.
November 11th. Yeah. And that's a great little bookstore in town. It's an old-fashioned building, and it's like different rooms or different themes. So there's like the mystery room, and there's like the historical fiction, and it's a great little spot.
Like fun.
And they have a bar, and that's fun.
Where is it? On 11th Street?
It's on 11th Street. Yeah.
So it's 1111 on 11th Street.
Oh
Is that right? Yeah.
11. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I'll put details on my website. So.
Good. Okay, good. I'm gonna put it on my Sherry asks, how did you get your agent, and how many agents did you query?
Oh, I queried so many. My agent.
That's great to hear. I'm sorry, but it's great to hear.
She's fabulous. She's out of Southern California, and she's with the Marsal Lyon agency, and I don't even remember how many I queried, but we just hit it off, and she wanted to see, I had submitted a partial manuscript. I did a query letter, then she asked for the partial manuscript, submitted the partial, then she wanted to see the full, submitted the full, and then she wanted to offer me representation.
Wow.
That was kind of the order of things. And I've been with her ever since, and she's amazing. And I don't know, we just click.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that natural fit with their agent. They take the agent because they want an agent, and it's maybe not the best personality fit. And so some people change agents in their course of their career, and that happens.
It happens, yeah. So, but it's nice that if you have one who you see eye to eye with, and also somebody who can kind of work with you over the course of your career.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question about being a traditionally published author. Are they doing all of the marketing for you, or how does that work?
Well, it's changed a lot. So I've been doing this about 25 years, but publishing, I don't even remember when I first got published, but 15 years as a fiction author. It's changed so much in that time because social media has become such a big part of the marketing and publicity effort of the book. And so that's where it's fallen a lot on the author. So unfortunately, I think there's a lot of writers out there that would love to tell you that they just only have to do writing, and they get to sit in their writer cave and like read books and drink their coffee and write their stories. But the reality is that they really want you to do social media and have a social media presence and all that stuff. And that can be very time consuming. But traditional publishers do also put investment dollars behind your book, like printing ARCs or, helping setting up publicity. I mean, it's tough though, because, as printed review places are going away. I mean, it used to be so many major newspapers had a review section, and Sunday they would do book reviews, and that's going away. So there's fewer and fewer print outlets that do book reviews, and even just people not reading the newspaper as much. I mean, when I was first published, getting an ad in USA Today was a really big deal. So if your publisher took out an ad for you, that was a big deal. Well, that's not even as much of a thing anymore, because everything's gone digital. So of course they can do digital ads for you, but it's all changed so much. So, but they do put investment behind you, which is nice. But you're still gonna, no matter what, whether you're independently published or traditionally published, unfortunately, I say that, unfortunately, social media is a big component of that, because it's just the way people are discovering
But how do
new
they
authors.
ask you to do that? Like, are they saying, we need you to commit so many hours?
I wouldn't say, well, I have not had anyone say that to me like that specifically, but it's more like, well, here's a Facebook banner for you to use to update your Facebook page with the book design. And they might provide you with these social media. I'm doing a Goodreads contest right now. They're giving away the book on Goodreads. That's a promotion that they're paying for. So they provided me with a little, like a graphic to show that that's happening. So they can provide you with these things, because they've got a whole team of people that design this stuff. And that's really nice. I mean, I'm a writer, but I am not a graphic designer. So it's nice when they can help you with that.
Oh yeah. So you have your account, and then they say, here's some materials to put on your account. And you say, okay, great. Thank you very much. So, oh, Sherry wants to know again the name of the company for your agent. Is it?
Oh, she's Marcel Lyon Literary Agency. And if you ever, just a little hint, if you're ever reading a book and you're like, oh, I love this book, it's so, this is the kind of book I want to write. Who's her agent? His agent. Oftentimes people will thank their agent in the acknowledgements. And so if you have a favorite author and you're wondering who their literary agent is, you might try looking at the acknowledgements, because they often thank that person.
You can go to Book People and you can read all the acknowledgements.
And then if you query that agency, they might be looking for that same type of fiction, because they've obviously been successful representing someone in that.
Can I ask about being nominated for awards work?
It changes. I mean,
does the agent or the publisher do that? Do they submit you? Do they have a list of awards coming up and submit you?
Well, it's been different. I think within the genre, you might know what awards, like for mystery, there's like the Edgar Awards or the, I mean, different genres have their own kind of awards that happen. Romance Writers of America had an award that they gave out every year. That organization went through a lot of churn, and they kind of disbanded, and now I understand they're back together. And so that awards thing has kind of been a little bit meandering. But if you have a genre that you're writing, know what the awards are, and maybe try and apply for the awards, or submit your work for the awards. Well, you can't. I don't know what awards they would be. Like middle grade, I'm not sure what the
or YA or
I don't
historical.
I don't know what those would be for that genre, but if you're able to submit your work for awards, go for it, because it can just bring more publicity to your novel. If it gets awards, you can talk about that on social media, and it draws attention to your book. So
even if you're just in the best finals, or
absolutely.
I just don't know.
Recognition.
Does the agent typically do that, or does the publisher?
Not the agent. It would probably be the publisher.
The publisher. Because I'm assuming they've got a staff of people who know all these awards.
Yes.
And they have a way of dropping your name in.
Well, they have deadlines, and most of the awards are annual, so it's like the deadline for submissions is oftentimes they're after the calendar year, so like January or something, and you submit your book that was published in the prior year, and so but it can be a good thing to help draw
That's
attention.
been a
And then
flagpole.
also if you win any writing contests, that's something you can put in your query letter.
Right.
You know, this manuscript was recognized as the whatever writing contest you entered.
Mhm.
That makes an agent take a second look and think, something here. Maybe I want to see the partial or the full manuscript. So yeah, the words are good. Just you can use them for.
I haven't figured out how to get into that,
Yeah.
but okay, thank you.
We'll do a little research on what
Yeah, well,
words-
that would be great.
For that, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a session on that one
Yeah,
time.
what words would you be eligible
Okay.
for? Yeah.
I know I could Google
Hey,
it. but-
Maureen.
Yeah, hi, Pat.
Hey, I have a question. First of all, Laura, thank you very much for being with us today. This has really been fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm in a car, so there's a little bit of background noise. But I always love reading novels that are set in Austin. So I loved reading Hidden. And my first question is, are any of your other novels set in Austin? And then the second part of that is, do you have plans to write any novels in the future that are set in Austin?
Oh, I'm so glad you like the Austin setting. I love Austin for novels. Well, first of all, since I live here, I'm always on the lookout for interesting little settings for different things to happen, a murder or hiding a body or, where the suspect works. Yes, quite a few of my novels are set in Austin. The one that comes to mind first is, I mentioned Thread of Fear, and the follow-up of that is Whisper of Warning. But the first novel in my Tracer series is set in Austin, and it's called Untraceable. And that kind of launched that series. And in the series, the forensic lab is based on a real place in Texas called the Body Farm.
Oh, we have somebody coming from here.
Look at all the great guests.
October.
Oh my goodness. Well, the Body Farm is a fascinating place, and they do this forensic anthropology research there. So I decided to use that as an inspiration, and so I created this fictional crime lab called the Delphi Center, where they do forensic anthropology, but then they also do all this other forensic stuff like ballistics and DNA and fingerprints and all this stuff. And that is in Central Texas in a fictional town. So it's kind of a fictional setting that I created, but it's near Austin. And so a lot of the books in that series feature some kind of Austin tie-in, whether it's the detective is coming down from Austin to help get help on his case, or the victim is in Austin, or there's some kind of Austin tie. So Deep Dark is another book that's set in Austin from that series. Gosh,
wow.
I mean, there's
so many books.
Austin is just a setting that I really like for setting books, because being here, I'm always inspired by different things.
It's good to know that you fictionalize.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I've obviously got some work to do and some books to read. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I love setting books in Texas. I mean, the state has so much to offer. It's got pretty much every kind of topography. So, I've set a book in the Piney Woods, and then a lot of the books in the Texas Murder File series are set on the Gulf Coast. And then this new book is in far west Texas. And then I've set books here in the Hill Country with all the creeks and canyons and rivers. And the book that I'm currently writing right now, it's just on my computer. It's not sent to my editor yet. It's set in the Hill Country, and the setting is like Kerr County, where I went to summer camp, but it's not Kerr County. It's a fictional county, so I can make it whatever I need it to be.
Wow.
But so I've been kind of just following all the news lately about Kerr County and just seeing the all the destruction there. It's been so sad. But Texas has a lot of setting choices because there's just so much here. So
how about Paladuro Canyon up near Amarillo?
I have not been there, but I've heard it's so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. That's definitely on my bucket list. I want to get up there and see that park. So
what's amazing is it's perfectly flat with these incredible canyons.
Yeah.
I mean, you're driving along on just perfectly flat land, and all of a sudden.
Yeah. I was driving through the Panhandle about a year ago, and I saw the signs for it, and I was looking and thinking, it doesn't look like there's anything there, but then I guess you just come up on it, right? Like so.
Do you are you involved in any kind of like organizations like Romance Writers of America, but also like smaller like writing groups kind of?
At the moment I'm not. I discontinued with Romance Writers of America around the time of COVID because the organization kind of dissipated a little bit, and I just never got back into. I kind of fell out with a lot of writing groups at the time of COVID because it just like people stopped meeting in person, and I just haven't gotten back into any of the organizations.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy. It's always fun to collaborate with other writers and talk and kind of swap ideas and stuff like that. So.
We only have a few minutes left, so I was going to kind of open it up to anybody else for like, last question.
Oh,
and also we're going
to write their name. I'm going to do a drawing for just.
Oh yeah, write your name on a.
If anyone wants to throw their name in the.
Put your name in the cup.
In the cup.
Yeah. I don't know if I should. We have a couple. Let's see what you should come up.
Thank you.
Maybe they're writing so fast. Hold on a second. Let's see. So we say, let's see. Kathy said you should come on up to the Fort Hood-Killeen area.
Thank you.
Mary says you've given a lot of good tips, very helpful. And then Nancy says
had to take off.
Oh yeah.
But it's been wonderful visiting with you all. And if anyone has other questions we didn't get to today, you can always email me through my website if you have a question or, you know, just.
This has been great. You've been
really it's great to talk to all of you.
Very helpful.
Good luck with all of your writing projects. Sounds like everybody's got something they're working on, so that's wonderful.
I love the research.
Yeah, that's always such a fun part.
That's the best part. And I generate files and files.
Yeah.
And I print them. I save them to the computer, but I also print them out.
Yeah, there's something about having the printed out.
Yeah, because I cover my desk with them, and then I can't find anything. So I have to go back to the computer to print it again.
Yeah. Well, and I also like to print out just little pictures of places, whether it's from traveling around and printing out my own pictures or maybe clippings from magazines to kind of get a visual of something, of the people or their setting, just kind of that visual reminder of what things look like so you can kind of weave in those details when you're writing. I don't know. Some people aren't visual that way, but for me, that helps.
Yeah.
Can we on Zoom participate in your drawing?
Yes, sure.
Sherry, I'll write one for sure.
We'll put your name in there.
Thank you. I would really like to read you. And I don't think I have.
Yeah. Sherry, if anybody else on Zoom also wants us to put your name in the for the drawing, just let me know and we'll put your name in. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, Dave. Can somebody write Dave?
Yep.
What day are we going to?
And if you guys are mystery people, I just want to let you know this is the book I'm reading right now. It's Karen Slaughter's new book. Do you all ever read her? She's a writer, and her books, a lot of them are set in the South, and this one's set in Georgia. And she's going to be coming to Barnes and Noble next Sunday.
Really?
And I'm going to be interviewing her at Barnes and Noble about her book.
Oh, cool.
If you're a mystery lover like I am, and you want to go hear Karen Slaughter, it's the one at the Arboretum.
Oh,
she's going to be coming. So.
Oh, okay.
It's a great book. I'm almost done with it. I just flew through this thing. It just moves so fast.
So don't lose your place.
Yeah, I've got it.
How fun. Have you met her before?
I don't think I've met her at anything before. But she's amazing. She has a series called well, I don't remember what she called it when she was writing it, but it's been made for a TV series now called the Will Trent series. I don't know if anyone's watched it on TV.
Well, what?
Will Trent.
Will Trent.
That's the name of her character in her books. And so, and then this is the start of a new series. So I'm going to be interested to ask her about starting a new series.
And was it Barnes and Noble in Arboretum? Where next Sunday?
Yeah, and then if y'all want to pass these around.
Yes.
So, and if you have any questions or anything, you want to send me an email. I think my website's on there, and you can just send me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's good to meet everybody. And
a couple more names here.
Everybody likes a bookmark.
That's wonderful. QR code too. That's clever.
Yeah, that's my daughter-in-law. My daughter-in-law does
also would like to.
And actually, the Sherry online, she's the one who did the cover.
Juanita would like her name in there as well.
Which Sherry?
That Sherry, right? Sherry Field. She did the cover.
This Sherry did the cover.
I love the cover. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
What kind of a dog is that?
well, it never says in
A
the book.
brown dog.
It's a big dog.
Okay.
A big brown dog.
You need the book never, the dog's the narrator, so the dog
Okay.
never describes itself.
Yeah.
And you never know, you don't know the dog's
Okay.
gender until the last.
I know y'all have to
paragraph.
get home or whatever, so I'll just pick a name, or why don't you pick? So go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Drum roll. Okay. All right.
Yep.
It is
No secret.
Madeline. Madeline. All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And if anybody else would like to see it, Sherry, you know, we'll see. I'm going to see you probably this week.
I did sign it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sherry, I'll see you this week, so I'll have a copy as well that you can take a look at. Okay.
Oh, great. That would be fun. Thank you.
Y'all can
Yeah, well, I'll.
come visit it at the library.
I know. Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for coming today. It was so nice. And really so
That's a good idea.
so generous with your thoughts and your time.
I feel inspired.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fabulous.
Thank you. It was very good. I'll read your books for sure.
I appreciate that.
Body Farm speaker.
Okay, I think the Body Farm speaker is coming in October, probably on Zoom, but I'm not sure for sure yet. But with all of ours are hybrid. And then next month is the the genetic genealogist coming. So.
And is all this on the library website, or is it the Sisters in Crime website?
It's we have on the recordings of them are through the if you go to West Bank Library's YouTube page.
Okay.
You go to YouTube and you look for West Bank Library.
Okay.
And we have like playlists of Sisters in Crime and author
Great.
visits and stuff like that.
Wonderful.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your.
And thank you for everybody who is online for joining us. All right. Have a good day and we'll see
Bye.
you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Maureen.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah, let's sign off. Bye-bye.